Oh man, you just know this one's going to be bad. Let me start with a little bit of background. Steel is a DC hero who had his own series for a while that spun out of the Superman comic. In the 90s, DC did a story called Doomsday, where Superman died by the hands of a villain named Doomsday. Later on, a story called Reign of the Supermen introduced 4 characters who filled the void in the time between Superman's death and his inevitable resurrection. One of these men was John Henry Irons, a former weapons designer whose life was once saved by Superman, and with the weapons he created now in the hands of street gangs, and Superman no longer there to protect everyone, he decides to step up and makes himself a metal power suit, kind of like Iron Man, and becomes the Man of Steel. When Superman comes back, they decide to just call him Steel because it's, shorter, and he's still active as a superhero today, despite his book getting canceled. When it was announced that they were making a Steel movie, this was right around the time that superhero movies were pretty much in the toilet, especially in the wake of Batman and Robin. When it was revealed that Shaquille O'Neal would be playing Steel and that it would have no connection to Superman, everyone knew it was going to be a travesty. There was even an interview with the film's director in Wizard magazine where he said that they were filming the scenes where Shaq was in the costume all at nighttime because it just seemed too ridiculous to be in broad daylight. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're ever filming a movie and you film at night because of shame, it's time to scrap the project and move on. Also starring in the movie, we have Annabeth Gish as Sparks, Judd Nelson as the bad guy Nathaniel Burke, and, Richard Roundtree? How far you've fallen. Though there's no connection to the Superman mythos, there's plenty of oblique references. Actually, the script is almost all references to something, especially to Shaq's basketball career. There were so many references to Shaq's inability to make free throws that it just became really, really redundant after a while. Near the end, he even has to save himself and a kid by throwing a grenade through a hole in a fence, and the kid gives him basketball advice on how to make the free throw. When the script spends most of its time making fun of your star, it's time to scrap the project and move on. And of course, since Richard Roundtree is there, slowly watching his career waste away, there has to be references to Shaft as well. Steel's origin in the movie isn't all that different from the comics, it just doesn't involve Superman. But it's all the same shit. He's a weapons maker in the army, he leaves after his rival Burke causes a disaster that kills a senator and cripples his friend Sparks. When he sees the weapons he designed in the hands of street gangs, he realizes Burke, who was discharged after the incident, is behind it, and he makes a stainless steel suit of armor to combat it. Now, I have to point out that these weapons are designed to destroy buildings and tanks, and this asshole makes his armor out of plates of stainless steel and chainmail. He has his signature hammer, but more often than not he uses it like it's a gun. He never once swings it like a hammer, which is the character's entire trademark. He can't fly like in the comics because apparently the idea of Shaq flying was just over the line, so he spends most of the time on a motorcycle. He's often shown running from the cops, and I think he honestly spends more screen time doing that than fighting bad guys. I don't even want to get into the plot. He basically just kicks everybody's ass and we get a happy ending. With the ridiculous plot, the over-the-top slang-smothered script and funky soundtrack, I honestly think that Warner Brothers would have been served better to create a time machine and release this movie 20 years earlier in 1977 and call it Black Steel, because it could pass off for a blaxploitation movie, except that it was released in an era that blaxploitation was considered grossly inappropriate. And the movie takes itself way too seriously to be considered a tribute or a spoof. Hell, don't even call it Black Steel. Sparks has almost as much screen time as Steel and is a whole lot smarter than him. They might have called it White Wheeler and the Steel Brother. Yeah, and make Richard Roundtree Steel instead of Shaq. Okay, I'm just fantasizing at this point. Back to the movie. Obviously, it was a big flop, and it's not hard to see why. It's just bad in every conceivable way. You can't watch it and not think that it was released as some sort of great cosmic joke. Steel gets a 2 out of 10, getting the extra point only for being mercifully short.